Today on r/am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for not ordering any food so I wouldn't have to split the bill? I, 27 male, have been a part of a small friend group, around 8 people total, basically since college. For some background, 2 people from the group, Susan and Greg, are just absolute leeches. Going out for lunch? Expect them to order the most expensive on the menu, then feed you some sob story about their finances, and then dump half the bill on you. Last weekend, Dan, one of the people from the group, told me about a casual dinner. I told him how if Susan or Greg were there I wouldn't be able to come. He tells me that they would be there but I should just put my opinions aside and come just once. This is kind of where I might be an a-hole. I agreed with him and told him I would be there. I show up and we all get to talking. Everyone began putting in their orders, most of them spent about $40. There were only about 6 people there. When it gets to Susan and Greg, they both order expensive dishes, around $200. When it was my turn to order, everyone looked at me, but I just pick up the menu and point to the $4 Miller Lite and sent the waiter away. Dan asked why I hadn't ordered anything and all I said was that I lost my appetite. The other 2 friends got up as well to cancel their orders and just have drinks. After the main courses came out, I saw Susan and Greg picking at their food. The waiter then brings over the check. Greg then grabs the waiter and asks him to split the check 6 ways. I stand up and correct him saying the check was to be split 3 ways. Greg looks at me confused and asks why since we always split the bill. I reminded him that 3 of us had not eaten any food so we would just be paying for our drinks. So basically at the end of the night, Dan, who probably only ate around $50 worth of food, was stuck with a $146.98 check at the end. Yes, I remember the exact number. I swear I saw his jaw drop when he picked that receipt up. I slid a $10 towards the check, said goodbye everyone and walked out. The next morning I found my phone full of texts from Greg and Susan telling me I was an a-hole for not ordering any food and forcing them to pay more than they had accounted for. I honestly laughed because the stakes alone were more than what they had paid, but to each their own right. I also got a lot of messages from Dan saying that I could have just not came instead of pulling that stunt and getting him stuck with an outrageous bill. For our next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my neighbor to grow up, get a life, and get the F over the fact that I painted my house a color he doesn't like? I bought a house in a community without an HOA. I wanted my home to be my home, and that includes making it look the way that I want. I also chose a neighborhood that already has fun, colorful houses instead of just plain earth tones. I finally got to the point where I could repaint my house. I picked a soft peachy color with sage blue and soft and dark pink accents. Fun and colorful without being too out there. I think if you Google colors blue sage peach, you'll see a similar palette. My neighbor Paul effing hates it and has been complaining since we started the project. He also made his opinion known that he hates our front lawn, lots of wildflowers and sunflowers, fun garden flags, a little free library, etc. Each and every time, I've told him that I don't care. Truly I don't. And I've suggested a few times that maybe he'd be happier in a HOA community that has control over everything and forces people into having earth-toned homes. Paul got angry when I suggested that and said he's lived in his home for 15 years and shouldn't have to move. I told him okay, well you'll have to learn to live with a little color. Last weekend I was putting in pavers that my niece and I had painted together. They're all things like ladybugs, turtles, birds, etc. in fun colors. I adore them and my niece is so excited she gets to be a part of my home. Paul came over to complain yet again, saying it was all an eyesore and my niece was here, so I just told him, "It's time for you to grow up and get the F over what I'm doing with my house." He got even pissier and told me that I have no right to talk to him this way. Do I know who I'm talking to, etc. I told him to just go away and get an effing life. If he has so much free time to b-word and moan about a colorful house, maybe he should get a hobby. He stormed off, calling me a nasty piece of work. My niece was cracking up on the side. For the record, no one in my family is uptight, we really don't care about cursing. I know some people still clutch their pearls over it around kids, she's 15, but I'm sure she says worse. Anyway, one of the other neighbors came to tell me that he's been flapping his yap about how disrespectful I am to talk to him like that. She told me that she knows he's a pain, but that he has been in the neighborhood forever, and it's worth being nice to him. I don't know. Is telling him to get a life that big of a deal? Am I the a-hole? Let's dive into our next story. Am I the a-hole for going to the police immediately when I found out my parents took out debt in my name? My parents took out credit cards and loans in my name. It was fine when they were paying the bills, but they got behind. I don't have a key to the mailbox, so I never saw the bills or anything. I just finished my 3rd year of university and I was going to move out. That would require me to get a credit check and stuff. My parents freaked out and forbid me from moving out. They said it was stupid that I would waste money on moving out when I could save money living at home. They don't like my boyfriend, so I thought that was their issue. But not was I wrong. Long story short, I am about $60,000 in debt because of them. I cannot afford to pay that off. I told them that they needed to clear the debt immediately and change the house rules so my boyfriend could spend the night. They said that they didn't have the money to pay the debt and that I could not strong-arm them into changing the rules of their house. I called my auntie and asked her if I could please come stay with her for a bit. She let me and asked a lot of questions. Then she showed me a dozen Reddit posts about parents screwing up their kids' future and kids allowing it. I went to the police and reported it. My parents got arrested and charged. They are furious with me. I know they didn't spend the money on me. I do not know what they did spend it on. I don't care. I feel bad for them, but I'm not letting them F up my future. On to the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling a group of women to leave my son's hospital room so I could dress him in private? My 9-year-old son Lauren had his appendix removed this morning. He had a basic understanding of the surgery, but the only hang-up he had was having to wear nothing but a hospital gown. No socks or underwear. When we got to the hospital room to get him prepped, he told his mom, my ex, and her sister, his aunt, to turn or to leave when he had to undress. Obviously he was fine with my being there and needed help. After the surgery, me, my ex, her sister, her 13-year-old niece, and my 18-year-old son were in the recovery room. We were waiting for Lauren to sober up and get discharged. He started to come to and whispered to me that he wanted to put clothes on because wasn't comfortable wearing nothing but a gown in front of 3 girls. At that same time, a female nurse came in to get his vitals and was talking to my ex. I asked if they could all step outside so I could help Lauren get dressed. They looked bewildered at my request. The nurse then said she'd help me dress him because my son was still a bit weak. I said no thanks. My teen son will help out. She asked if I was serious by asking her to leave over this, and I said yes. My son doesn't feel comfortable getting dressed in front of 4 females. The nurse said she's been a nurse for years and has heard of anything crass. I said you're comfortable, my son isn't, and you're being insensitive is what's crass and clueless. My ex-wife said I was being dramatic. They left and me and my other son got him dressed. My ex called me and said that I owe her and everyone else an apology. I refused. I said if the roles were reversed, then you'd have a very different opinion. Also, Lauren has to take a bath for the next few days, and she was crazy if she was expecting Lauren to let her wash him or even be in the bathroom with him. It's different with me or his brother or friends, and I don't have to convince her for me to be right. Edit. For the record, the gown he was wearing was made out of paper. It wasn't even cloth. My son was dying to get out of it. He was basically naked. I don't think my son would have minded a male nurse at all, but since me and my older son was there, the thought of requesting a male nurse didn't cross my mind. I don't know if they had a male nurse available at that moment because the nurse made a comment that they were short-staffed but all qualified. I wasn't going to argue with her over who got to put on my son's Minecraft underwear or zipped his hoodie. It's a waste of my time. She did mention how she didn't want him to get hurt with my dressing him, and I said then you best let me handle it because he'll fight you. Update. I did have to take him back to the hospital this morning because he couldn't pee but had to. He was in a lot of pain. At the hospital, I asked if a nurse was going to see my son before or after his male doctor, and they said yes. I asked for a male, and they said they'd ask the head nurse. She asked why it was so important to have a male nurse. I told her we can schedule an appointment to fight over it after my son sees the doctor. They did find a male nurse, and my son was totally relaxed around him. The male nurse said a lot of female nurses take it personal when patients ask for a male nurse, and it's always been that way. Fortunately, my son didn't need a catheter and is fine. Our last story for today. Am I the a-hole for ignoring my friend's phone calls after she invited herself, her spouse, her children, and her friends to my home for an impromptu barbecue without my permission? My friend is having a hard time with her spouse and really needs someone to be there for her while they work through their issues. We only just recently reconnected after not speaking for 4 years. Now, every time she calls, she asks me what I'm doing for the day or at that moment and then invites herself, her family of 4, and some of her friends over to my house. Example 1 for clarity. Friday was her spouse's birthday. Monday she told me her plan was to take him to dinner. Then she calls me Friday morning asking me what I was doing. I told her I was just watching a movie on my couch. Then she says I know it's last minute, but I want to come over and barbecue at your house. She said the kids could play together and we could hang out and have some drinks. I hesitated initially and then told her that I didn't really have a lot of meat here nor was my home company ready. She responded that she would grab some more food and do all of the cooking. Then I said okay. I cleaned up a little bit and then I received a second call. She excitedly told me that she invited her guy friend, and he may bring a friend for me to talk to, and a female friend of hers was also coming. I was so shocked that she was trying to throw a party, not just come over and hang out with just her family like she implied during the first call. Her family already was 4 people that I was not expecting, which would have made a total of 8 people including my own children. I have only met 2 of the 3 people she invited. She did not even ask if she could invite anyone else to my home or give out my address. Luckily, I got a call on the other line and told her I'd call back. 2 hours passed by and she called me repeatedly. I decided to text her that something came up and I can't host a party for her husband. I did not receive a response. I waited another 2 hours and then called her to see how the barbecue party was going. She told me she didn't even have the barbecue party. Like WTF. I asked her why she didn't ask her friends to come to her apartment since she has her own barbecue grill, and why didn't she at least go out to dinner like she planned originally. She literally didn't even answer the first question, but said she didn't want to spend a lot of money going out to eat. Am I the asshole for making up an excuse to end the call and then ignoring all of her repeated calls to confirm? And those are all the stories we have for today. See you tomorrow.